What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the wiring inside your own brain? The invisible battle you wake up every morning believing you're in control. You choose what time to get up. You choose whether you hit snooze. You choose whether today will be productive or another day lost to distraction. Or at least, that's what you think. The truth is far less comfortable. Most people don't run their lives, their brains run their lives. Patterns built years ago quietly dictate every decision, every habit, every impulse. You think you're steering the wheel, but the brain you inherited from yesterday is already halfway down the road before you even open your eyes. This is the part of the story no one talks about. Success is not about motivation. Success is about wiring. Motivation surges come and go, but wiring stays. Wiring repeats. Wiring controls. And unless you change it, unless you actually rewire the machinery inside your skull, you will keep living the exact same life, over and over again, expecting different results. That's where our story begins. Not with a person. Not with an event. But with a brain. The brain that wanted more. In a quiet apartment, in a quiet city, lived a man named Armin. He wasn't special, not at first glance. An ordinary job, an ordinary income, an ordinary routine held together by an extraordinary frustration. Every day he promised himself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would wake up early. Tomorrow he would start the business he kept planning. Tomorrow he would work out, learn a new skill, break old habits. But every tomorrow looked exactly like yesterday. He couldn't understand why. It felt like trying to run through mud, like something inside him kept pulling him back every time he tried to move forward. One night, defeated, he typed a question into his phone: why can't I change my habits, even when I want to? He didn't expect answers that would change his life. He didn't expect to discover a piece of neuroscience that would feel like a slap in the face. The sentence that broke him, a neuroscientist in a video said something Armin would never forget: your brain isn't designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you the same. That line lingered like smoke in the room. Keep you the same? Was that why nothing changed? He kept watching, hungry for understanding. The scientist continued: your brain creates loops, neural pathways, that repeat behaviors automatically. The more you repeat something, the deeper the loop becomes. Rewiring those loops is possible, but it requires deliberate, structured friction. That word hit him: friction. Success was not about being better. It was about interrupting old wiring long enough to build new wiring. Suddenly, it made sense why motivation failed him. Motivation was emotional. Wiring was mechanical. He wasn't fighting laziness, he was fighting architecture. A glimpse of the science. Armin fell into a rabbit hole of neuroscience. He learned about synaptic pruning, the brain's way of deleting old connections. He learned about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to build new ones at any age. He learned about the habit loop, cue, routine, reward, and how the brain automates anything repeated enough times. The most shocking discovery? Every habit he had right now was once a choice. But then the brain automated it. Turned it into a shortcut. Turned it into a pathway. And those pathways were now driving his life, with or without his permission. That's when he made a promise. A quiet one. A dangerous one. The kind of promise that changes a story forever. If my brain can build pathways, then I can build the ones I want. He didn't know it yet, but this one decision would lead him down a road filled with struggle, obsession, breakthroughs, and a single moment, where everything in his life would shift. But first, he would have to face the truth: rewiring a brain is easy in theory. In practice, it is war. The first battle, breaking the loop. The next morning, Armin woke up before dawn, not because he felt motivated, but because he was angry. Angry at the years he had wasted. Angry at the habits that had quietly taken control of him. Angry at the invisible enemy hiding in his skull, pulling the strings of his life without permission. He walked to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, and stared at himself in the mirror. For the first time, he wasn't asking, "What's wrong with me?" He was asking, "What is my brain trying to protect?" Because that's what he had learned: the brain doesn't sabotage you out of malice. It sabotages you out of safety. Comfort is safe. Routine is safe. Predictability is safe. And success? Success requires the exact opposite. Dopamine, the silent dictator. Armin spent the next few days studying the chemical that ruled his life, dopamine. He always thought dopamine was about pleasure. But he was wrong. Dopamine is about anticipation. About what comes next. About what might happen. It's the fuel behind desire, motivation, craving, and habit loops. And the shocking truth he discovered? His brain had been rewarding the wrong things. Every time he took the easy option, scrolling instead of working, snoozing instead of waking, escaping instead of growing, his brain released a tiny reward. Not because the activity was good, but because it was familiar. His brain wasn't wired for greatness. It was wired for repetition. That realization hit him hard. All this time, he whispered, the enemy wasn't my willpower, it was my programming. The 3-second rule of rewiring. Armin discovered a method used by neuroscientists studying habit disruption. A simple rule: if you interrupt a habit within the first 3 seconds of the urge, the brain's neural loop weakens. 3 seconds. The difference between repeating the past and rewriting the future. So he tried it. The next time he reached for his phone in bed, he stopped at second 2. The next time he felt the urge to skip his task, he interrupted at second 1. The next time he wanted to distract himself, he paused and breathed. Tiny victories. Invisible victories. But each one chipped away at the old pathway. Every interruption was a crack in the loop. And the more cracks he created, the more light began to get in. Friction becomes his weapon. Motivation doesn't rewire the brain. Friction does. So Armin created friction around every bad habit. If he wanted to stop late-night scrolling, he put his phone in another room. If he wanted to reduce sugar, he stopped buying it entirely. If he wanted to wake up early, he placed his alarm across the room. If he wanted to work on his dreams, he set up his laptop the night before with the project open, waiting for him like a promise. Friction wasn't supposed to feel good. It was supposed to disrupt. To interrupt. To shake the brain out of autopilot. Slowly, painfully, it worked. But progress came with a cost. Neural rebellion. One evening, something strange happened. Working on the future he wanted. But on the 10th night, he felt an overwhelming urge, a craving so strong it felt physical. His chest tightened. His fingers twitched. His mind screamed for the old habits. It wasn't weakness. It was neuroscience. A phenomenon called neural resistance, the brain fighting to keep its old wiring alive. He paced the room, battling impulses he thought he had defeated. He didn't know it then, but this was a sign of progress. When the brain resists, it means the rewiring is working. New pathways were forming, but the old ones weren't ready to die quietly. That night, Armin broke. He gave in. He scrolled. He binged. He ate junk food he didn't even want. He stayed up past 2 a.m. It felt like losing a war. But he didn't realize something important: even failure tells the brain something, that the new path exists. Even if he stumbled, the rewiring had already begun. The moment that changed everything: the next morning, he woke up exhausted. Not because of lack of sleep, but because he felt like he'd betrayed himself. He dragged himself to the bathroom mirror. But this time, something was different. Instead of shame, he felt clarity. Last night wasn't a failure. Last night was data. The cravings weren't random. They were targeted. Predictable. Triggered by specific cues. He had spent his life fighting habits blindly, but now he could see the pattern. Every habit had a birthplace. A moment it activated. A cue that triggered the loop. If he could master the trigger, he could master the habit. And that realization, that precise, scientific insight, was the turning point. Armin wasn't just trying to improve himself anymore. He was conducting an experiment on the most powerful machine in the world, the human brain. And experiments don't fail. They reveal. He wiped the fog from the mirror. Looked at himself with new determination. This time, he whispered, I'm not just changing my habits. I'm changing my wiring. He didn't know that the next phase of his transformation would test him in ways he had never experienced, leading him to a breakthrough that would alter his life in a single, unforgettable moment. But to get there, he would have to confront the deepest, oldest neural pathway in his brain. The one that controlled who he believed he was. The identity pathway. Rewiring habits is difficult. Rewiring emotions is harder. But the hardest thing to rewire is identity. Because identity is not who you want to be. Identity is who your brain has accepted you are. And Armin was about to learn that the brain protects identity more fiercely than any habit. The hidden circuit. One night, after weeks of progress, Armin sat at his desk reading about something called the identity circuit. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, a system in the brain that constantly narrates who you are based on your memories, your past, your failures, your patterns. It's the voice that whispers, you've never been consistent. You always quit halfway. You're not the type to succeed. People like you don't win. It doesn't say these things to hurt you. It says them to stabilize you. To maintain psychological continuity. Your brain's job is not to make you exceptional. Its job is to make you predictable. Armin sat back, stunned. All his life, he thought his self-doubt was emotional. But it was neurological. A network built from the past trying to imprison the future. And if he wanted to change his life, he would have to break the oldest, strongest wiring of all, who he believed himself to be. The night it all collapsed, it happened unexpectedly, as breakthroughs often do. Armin was working late on the personal project he had been developing during his rewiring journey. He was tired. His mind was foggy. His confidence thin. He paused, stretched, and out of nowhere a thought crept in, this is pointless. You'll never finish this. You're not built like those successful people. You're just pretending. The voice wasn't loud. It was quiet, too quiet. A whisper so familiar that it felt like truth. He froze. This was deeper than habit. Deeper than cravings. Deeper than resistance. This was identity talking. The old self, the predictable self, pulling him back to who he used to be. And the worst part? For a moment, he believed it. His chest tightened. His hands shook. A weight pressed on him as if the entire room was collapsing. His brain wasn't just fighting his new behavior, it was fighting his new self. The breakdown. He pushed his chair back and paced the room. All the progress he had made, the morning routines, the discipline, the habit rewiring, felt like paper shields against a storm. He grabbed his journal and poured every doubt onto the page. Who am I trying to fool? I'm not wired for greatness. No matter what I do, I fall back. Maybe the neuroscientists are wrong. Maybe I'm the exception, the one who can't change. He sat on the floor, head in his hands, feeling like the brain he was trying to fix was instead consuming him from the inside. The old pathway, the identity circuit, was firing at full force. It wanted him back. Back to safety. Back to normal. Back to predictable. And for the first time on this journey, he felt like giving up. But then, something snapped in the middle of his panic. In the middle of the storm, a memory surfaced. A sentence from a neuroscientist he had saved months earlier: "The brain resists identity change the hardest, because identity is the final layer of self. But once identity rewires, everything else follows effortlessly." Identity is the final layer. The last gate. And resistance was not a sign of failure. It was a sign he was close. Very close. He stood up slowly, still shaking, but no longer afraid of the panic. The storm wasn't him. The storm was the circuitry being forced to change. This wasn't collapse. This was combustion, the burning of an old identity so a new one could form. For the first time in his life, he understood: you don't become successful because you want to. You become successful because the old identity finally dies. The rewrite. He walked to the mirror. The same mirror where the journey began. The same reflection. But a different man standing there. He looked himself dead in the eyes and whispered, "I am not who my past says I am. I am who my actions say I am." And then something extraordinary happened. Not magical. Not mystical. Neurological. A new connection fired. A new pathway sparked to life. A new identity loop, small, fragile, newborn, formed inside his mind. He felt the shift. Subtle but real. He wasn't trying to become someone new. He already was someone new. And now, the habits, the discipline, the rewiring all made sense. They weren't creating success. They were supporting the identity that finally believed it deserved success. The breakthrough. Armin turned back to his desk, opened his laptop, and worked with a clarity he had never felt. The doubts didn't disappear, but they no longer controlled him. He wasn't fighting the urges anymore. He understood the urges. He wasn't running from the old self. He was outgrowing it. The brain that fought him was the same brain now helping him. Because identity had shifted, and once identity shifts, the brain follows. It was the climax of his journey, the moment the science became real, the moment the wiring bent to his will. But what he didn't know was that a twist was coming. A twist that would challenge everything he had built. A twist that would force him to choose between the old world and the new one. A twist that would reveal whether his rewired brain could withstand a real test. A test life was already preparing for him. The test of a rewired mind. Success stories usually end after the breakthrough. But real life doesn't. The universe has a strange way of testing you right when you think you've won. Not out of cruelty, but to confirm your transformation is real. For Armin, that test came suddenly, without warning, without mercy, and without the slightest consideration for all the rewiring he had done. It arrived as an email. A single notification. 4 lines of text. And a blow so sharp it almost shattered everything he had rebuilt. The email. He opened his inbox at 8:17 a.m., still energized from the morning routine that had become natural to him now. The subject line read, "Termination notice." His breath caught. He opened the email. His company, the one he had worked at for years, the one he had planned to leave after his personal project was ready, was downsizing. His position was eliminated. Effective immediately. No warning. No transition period. No safety. Just a line telling him to return company equipment. And suddenly everything inside him went silent. All the wiring, all the identity shifts, all the progress felt like they had been sucked out of his chest. Replaced by a cold, familiar voice. "You see? You're not stable. You're not meant for success. You can't handle uncertainty. This is why people don't change." The old pathway, the identity circuit, roared back to life as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. This was the twist. The ultimate test. The collapse that didn't happen a year ago. This moment would have destroyed him. He would have spiraled into panic, self-doubt, exhaustion, and old habits like a collapsing bridge returning to dust. But something unexpected happened. The panic hit him, yes. The fear crashed into him, of course. The uncertainty wrapped its hands around his throat naturally. But then, from somewhere deep inside, a new voice rose. A voice he had built. A voice he had rewired into existence. It whispered, "Breathe. Observe the feeling. Don't react. This is old wiring, not truth." He froze. The storm didn't vanish, but it lost its authority. He was no longer inside the panic. He was watching it. Like a scientist observing data. His breathing slowed. His vision steadied. His thoughts became deliberate. This wasn't identity collapsing. This was identity being tested. And for the first time, he saw the difference between who he was and who he had become. The decision that defined him. He sat down at his desk and stared at the half-finished project that had been his dream for years. A choice stood in front of him: fall back into the old wiring. Panic. Despair. Go back to autopilot. Step forward into the new identity. Use the crisis as fuel. Build the life he had rehearsed in his mind. Become the architect of his future. A year ago, he wouldn't have even realized there was a choice. But now, his brain gave him space room to choose deliberately instead of react unconsciously. And so he made a decision that would alter the rest of his life: I'm done renting my future. From today, I build it. He didn't feel fearless. He didn't feel ready. He didn't feel certain. He felt capable. Because capability is not a feeling. It's wiring. And his wiring was different now. The rewired pathway awakens. Armin spent the next 3 weeks working harder than he ever had. Not from fear, but from purpose. Every morning, the old identity tried to slip back in. What if you fail? What if you run out of money? What if the project doesn't work? But the new identity, the rewired identity, had an answer: we don't run from fear anymore. We use it. He built relentlessly. He created tirelessly. He focused with a clarity that felt almost unnatural. Not because the path was easy, but because the brain he had built was finally designed for this version of him. And then, one quiet morning, 3 months after losing his job, the notification came. A sale. His first client. His first income from something he created with his own rewired mind. He stared at the screen as emotions crashed over him: relief, joy, disbelief, triumph. Not because of the money, but because the neural pathway of success had just been carved into his brain. And once a pathway exists, the brain strengthens it, multiplies it, and reinforces it every time it's used. Success wasn't a dream anymore. It was a circuit. And he had built it. The real lesson. So what was the point of Armin's journey? It wasn't that he became successful. It wasn't that he won a battle with himself. It wasn't that he built a new life. It was this: most people never fail because they're incapable. They fail because their brain is wired for who they used to be. Rewiring your brain isn't motivational fluff. It's chemistry. It's biology. It's architecture. And the moment your identity rewires, truly rewires, the world doesn't change. You change. And when you change, the world simply follows. Armin didn't get lucky. He didn't get rescued. He didn't find a shortcut. He built the machinery of success inside his own skull. And the same machinery is available to you. Because you are not a prisoner of the brain you were born with. You are the engineer of the brain you are becoming. Because you are not a prisoner of the brain you were born with. You are the engineer of the brain you are becoming. You are the engineer of the brain you are becoming.